In this lesson today, we're going to talk about y-intercepts and additive relationships. Now, before we dive on into those two concepts, let's talk about the proportional relationship, just to make sure that we have that under wraps. We talked about this before, and the formula for a proportional relationship is y is equal to mx. And remember, a proportional relationship goes through the origin. So if you look at these three examples below, you can see that all three of these graphs are going to run through the origin. So that makes it a proportional relationship. Now, if we were to look at this first graph here and we need to figure out the slope of this line, remember, we choose 2 points on the line and we're going to rise and we're going to run to determine the slope. So in this case, it's going to be 4/1, which is equal to 4. So the slope of this line is 4. If we were to rewrite the proportional relationship, it would be y is equal to 4x. For the second one, if we picked 2 points and found the slope, we would rise and run. That would give us 1/1, which is equal to 1. And then our y is equal to 1x. And if you remember from before, y equals 1x, we can actually rewrite as just y equals x, because we usually don't write that 1 coefficient in front of our x. And the last one, I'm going to go ahead and choose these 2 points here. And I'm going to rise 1 and I'm going to run 3. So that's going to be 1/3. And that doesn't simplify any further. So y is equal to 1/3 x will be my proportional relationship. Now, this is a proportional relationship. Now I want to introduce to you this concept of a y-intercept. So you may have remembered looking at this formula up at the top and seeing y equals mx plus b. That's what we're going to talk about now. So the b is the y-intercept. So looking at the first graph here below, it says the location where a graph crosses the y-axis. Well, looking at this graph, where does the graph cross the y-axis? Remember that the x-axis is the horizontal axis, and then the y-axis is the vertical. So you can see that our graph is going to cross that axis right there, right at about 3. And I just counted 1, 2, 3 up from our origin. So that means that my b is going to be equal to 3. The coordinate of my y-intercept is going to be 0, 3. And that's just taking it and plotting it and figuring out that that point is located at 0, 3. All right, let's look at the next one just for an example. You can see that my y-intercept is going to be right here. Don't forget, x is horizontal and y is vertical. So that coordinate right there is my y-intercept, or my b. And his location is at -1. The coordinate is going to be 0, -1. All right. So now that we have this concept, let's talk about the coordinate. Over here we have 0, 3, and we have 0, -1. Do you notice where the 0 is located? Do you notice that the 0 is located in the x position? The y-intercept will always have an x of 0. So looking at the table of values below, it says in the table, the y-intercept is the y value when the x is equal to 0. So you can see in this table that right here is our y-intercept. So in our case, our y-intercept will be 2. Okay, let's put this piece together with what we already know. Now, we already know the idea of y equals mx. Now I'm changing it into y equals mx plus b. This is going to be called an additive relationship, unlike before where we just had y equals mx. The first big difference here is that the graph no longer goes through the origin. You can see on these 3 below that the graph is going to cross somewhere else other than the origin. Okay, let's look at the first example. I want to figure out my slope, which is m, my y-intercept, which is b, and then my equation for my additive relationship. So let's go ahead and find that out. Remember, the m is always using 2 coordinates that you know. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the coordinate. Let's go ahead and use this coordinate right here and this coordinate right here. I'm going to rise 1 and I'm going to run 1. So a rise and a run of 1 is just going to give me a slope of 1. My y-intercept is going to be this guy right here, right where he crosses the y-axis. So you can see that that number is going to be 2. So if I were to piece this together, my additive relationship would be y is equal to x plus 2. For the purposes of these examples that we're going to be using in this unit, when we have an additive relationship, our slope is always going to be 1. Later on down the road in Algebra 1, that coefficient will change to a different type of number. All right, let's look at the second example. Let's go ahead and find the slope of this line. I'm just going to go ahead and select 2 points. Pick this one and this one. My rise is 2 and my run is 2. So 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1. Like I just said, our slope is always going to be 1. All right, now I need to find that new piece, that y-intercept. Here he is. He's at -2. So my b is -2. So I'm going to put that into my additive relationship. Y is equal to x minus 2. And we're done. All right, and the last one. I bet you can guess what our slope's going to be, but let's just go ahead and test it. Let's go ahead and use this point and this point. Rise of 3, run of 3. My 3 divided by 3 is also going to equal 1. My y-intercept, that's the new piece. Here he is. He's at 1, 2, 3, 4, it looks like. That's going to be an additive relationship of y is equal to x plus 4. All right, now that we've looked at the graph, the biggest part that we learned here was that the y-intercept is the location where the graph meets the y-axis. Now let's look at a table of values. Again, we're talking about an additive relationship, so that's going to be y is equal to mx plus b. Remember, the m is always going to be a 1 in our case. It will change as time goes on, but for right now, it's just going to equal 1. And then our b is what we're looking for. So, knowing that information, let's look at this first example. We're given a table of values, and we want to figure out the m, the b, and the y. So like I said earlier, our m is going to be 1. So let's go ahead and fill that in. Now to determine my b, what I need to do is do the additive relationship. The word add is in additive. So let's go ahead and see how we can get from x to y by adding. We can see that my y-intercept is going to be right here, right? Because if you look at that coordinate, we have 0, 3. When 0 is in the x-coordinate, we know that that's going to be our y-intercept of 3. Another way that you could do this is this. You could find the additive number for each of these points. So 0 plus 3 will give us 3. And 1 plus 3 will give us 4. And 2 plus 3 will give us 5. And 3 plus 3 will give us 6. It's very similar to the multiplier, but instead we're adding. So we use the multiplier whenever we're finding a proportional relationship. We use the additive number. We add whenever we're using the additive format. All right, here we go. Y is equal to x plus 3. And we're done. Next one. Can you locate the y-intercept? You might have said, oh, it's right here because 0 is in the x position. Therefore, our y-intercept is 4. We also know that our slope is going to be 1. All right, great. Now, what if I wanted to use that additive number? Well, -2 plus 4 is going to give us 2. 0 plus 4 is going to give us 4. 2 plus 4 is going to give us 6. And 4 plus 4 is going to give us 8. So you can see that that y-intercept stands correct. That gives us a additive formula of y is equal to x plus 4. Now, if we were to take this table of values and look at it as a word problem, it's going to look just slightly different. So let's go ahead and look at this word problem here. Alrighty. Jack charges $4 to type a paper. Each page costs $1. So for this problem, it says create a table to determine the y-intercept and then write the equation in y equals x plus b format. So I'm first going to go ahead and label my x and y. I'm going to label my x as my pages. And I'm going to label my y as my charges. So that's just going to be a money sign. So we have pages and we have charges. Alrighty. So for the first example here, you can see that Jack charges $4 to type a paper. Each one is $1. So I want to look at how much is it going to cost to make 0 pages, 1, 2, and 3. If let's go ahead and start with this one right here. what if I had one page? What if I had Jack type up one page for me? Well, not only is he going to charge me for the page itself, but he's also going to charge me for the paper, right? So you can see that if he charges me $1 for each page, well, that's on top of his original flat fee, we might call it. So if we were to take $4 plus 1, that's going to give me $5. What about 2 pages? He's going to charge me that flat fee of $4 plus 2 more additional dollars just for each page. That's going to give me 6. What about 3? So for 3 pages, not only is it going to charge me for that flat rate of $4, but it's going to be 3 more additional dollars, giving me $7. We can go back up here too. Well, what if there aren't any pages? Well, Jack is still going to charge us $4 just for writing the paper, just for initiating the paper. So now that we have our table of values filled out, let's go ahead and see if we can figure out the M, the B, and the Y. We know that the M is going to be 1, and the B we need to determine using the table. So let's looky here. We could look right here and see that our X is going to be 0, giving us our y-intercept of 4. Or we could use that additive number. So 0 plus 4 gives us 4. 1 plus 4 is 5. 2 plus 4 is 6. And 3 plus 4 is 7. We could do that as well. That giving us y is equal to x plus 4. All right. Last thing that I want to do today, actually 2 more things I want to do today. It says, given the following ordered pairs and y-intercepts, graph the line. So now we're going to take some information and we're going to put it onto a coordinate plane. So here we have the y-intercept, which is our B, and we just have a coordinate. Just like before, we want to take our coordinate and we want to graph him on the coordinate plane. So 1, 4, this is our x, this is our y. I'm going to go ahead and plot him right on the coordinate plane. Okay, now you can see that my y-intercept is given to me, and my y-intercept is 2. So I'm going to go ahead and put him on the coordinate plane as well. Now that I have 2 points, what I can do is I can just go ahead and connect those 2 coordinates and draw the line. The other thing I can do is I can figure out, well, what is the slope between those 2 points? It looks like it's going to be a rise of 2 and a run of 1. So I could continue that pattern all the way up my page, and that will show me all the other coordinates on my line. So go ahead and take a second and do that. And there it is. I'm going to go ahead and grab my ruler and draw my nice straight line through my coordinates with my arrows at the end. And I'm done. Here's another one. I always like to start with the coordinate. So let's go ahead and take our -3, -3, and let's go ahead and plop it onto our coordinate plane. So we have -3 and -3. There he is. And my slope here, not my slope, I'm sorry. My y-intercept is -1, so I'm going to go ahead and put him on my coordinate plane. And I could go ahead and draw a line right through these 2 points, but first I'm going to go ahead and determine my slope so I can extend the line. So I have a rise of 2 and a run of 3. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue that pattern up my page. And I'm going to draw in my dots. You don't have to draw in these little lines that I'm drawing right now, but if they help you, go for it. Alrighty, grab your straight edge, and there's your line. All right. Last thing I want to do today is I want to take an equation. Now this is putting it all together. Let's take this equation of this additive relationship, and let's go ahead and graph it. So y equals x plus 2. Don't forget that this is y equals mx plus b. So let's go ahead first and figure out what is our m. Our m is 1. Let's figure out our b. Our b is 2. Can we take that information and graph it now? The y-intercept I know is at 2, so let's go ahead and put him there. And I know the slope was 1. So therefore, 1 breaks into 1 over 1. So I'm going to rise 1, run 1, rise 1, run 1, all the way up my page and all the way down my page. And that is going to give me the graph of my additive relationship. Go ahead and draw yourself a line, right through those coordinates with your arrows at the end. Here's another one. Remember, y equals mx plus b. So you can see here that my slope is going to be 1. And my y-intercept is going to be -1. So I'm going to go ahead and plot that y-intercept of -1. And my slope is 1. So I'm going to rise 1, run 1. And I'm going to do that all the way up my page again. You can see that's a lot of points being generated. The bigger the slope, the less points you're going to be plotting. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a line through my coordinates with my arrows at the end. And that is how you graph your additive relationship. All right, that brings us to the end of this lesson, and we will be talking about some other things in the lessons to come.